Hey everyone, I'm Rather Go here. I just finished playtesting the alpha of the Bloodborne fan campaign as Diana, and I want to talk about how I feel about her. You will notice this is a 76 experience deck. And yes, she is a mystic, she got a lot of free experience, but 76 is still kind of a lot. She specifically got 6-ish free experience, not like across the campaign, specifically here because of choices I made. Then in addition, it's a down the rabbit hole arcane research, and in the thick of it deck, I was entering scenarios with 5/5 soak. But with all these cancels and Brother Xavier's, I felt comfortable doing that, and there was like 1 or 2 points where I regretted that decision, but usually it was fine. My original deck plan for this did not include Divination or Deny 5. I intended on just like upgrading my guts, only having these because I'm a flex character. I don't need to get more clues than this. But I ended up being the main clover and having more experience than gods, so Deny 5s and Divinations made their way into the deck. And obviously a 76 experience character is going to be performing really well, but honestly I think my opinions on Diana are more shaped by the first half of the campaign than the second half. The second half of the campaign consisted of multiple turns where a boss would show up and Skids would trip him and beat him to death with knuckle dusters, and Diana would just beat him to death with Cyclopean Hammer, and we'd kill a boss the scenario was built around in 1 turn. Like, all the stuff in the deck that's not Cyclopean Hammer really didn't affect my opinion of Diana too much, because it was so much the Cyclopean Hammer just being gross. And I guess because of that, let's talk about Cyclopean Hammer a little bit. Cyclopean Hammer and Dragon Pole and Edge of the Earth introduced a new type of flex mystic, and it's really, really powerful. You fight with your hands, you clue find with your arcane slots. Any character that has 3 fists is looking at doing this, and Diana's one of them. She is very, very transparently strong at doing this, and she uses her other card slots outside of this for doing the Diana stuff, for getting cancels. I do want to say, I think Fool Me Once shouldn't be in the deck. Fool Me Once didn't actually get played a single time this campaign. That's not correct. It got played 3 or 4 times this campaign. It never went off a single time. Maybe it went off once. I think it went off exactly once. That could be user error on my part. I'm not saying it's not. But this is just not a premium cancel effect. I would honestly rather like cut this for Tempt Fate and then run Ward of Radiance. That's how I feel about this. Of all the cancels in the deck, this one feels basically useless, and I don't think the deck was made better by running it. So how did Diana actually do? How does she compare to just being a 5-head mystic? Because promising to be a 6-head mystic, like the promise for Diana, right? It's so good. You're a 6-head mystic, you run all the cancel events, your signature lets you cancel them twice. And the fact that I never played Bandolier in a second asset a single time in this campaign will give you a good idea of just like how far away we are from actually succeeding at that promise. By the way, the Bandolier is better in this deck than it looks. I had a hand slot asset from the alpha test of Bloodborne that gave you +1 head, and you could use it as warded protection, which would then throw it under Diana instead of discarding it, which synergizes with her really, really well. I still never got a single Bandolier play. Cyclopean Hammer is so expensive, arcane assets are so expensive. On the whole, making money from Diana's ability just pays for the events. So the economy just isn't there to do a Bandolier setup. It just doesn't work. Cyclopean Hammer really is at the cost of Twilight Blade. You don't get to do both. And at the point where I'm running Bandoliers and Fool Me Once, and I think all of them were just mistakes, and I'm 3 cards off of an optimal list, and I've wasted 4 experience. 6 actually, because I have down the rabbit hole, right? This is my competitive Hearthstone player coming out. I've never talked about this on the channel, but I do have competitive card game experience in Hearthstone and Elder Scrolls Legends. I got to Legend in both of those card games. I think it was still called Legend and Elder Scrolls, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And in my competitive experience, I realized something really important. If you see this 35 card deck and you see another deck with 30 cards the same, you might think those are the same deck. That is inexperience speaking. 5 cards is 1/7 of the deck. It is a huge amount of difference. If I'm running 3 cards that are just like actually useless and weighing the deck down, I don't feel like I have the right to comment on Diana. Running like 1 or 2 suboptimal cards in your decks in a competitive card game is enough to cause you to lose matchups that you should win. And it's enough to meaningfully distort my opinion on Diana, because I've got multiple cards that are weighing me down, so I don't feel like I'm properly educated to talk about Diana. I've weighed her down, I've crowded out her signature, I've run dead cards. Too many mistakes were made for me to be confident in what I say, but I'm gonna say what my experience was, even though I feel I have no authority on her as a result of how many little problems my deck has. Because even though this might be like 30 cards out of the 35 best cards in Diana, it's nowhere near playing her optimally. It's not even close. I want to believe Cyclopean Hammer is inoptimal on her. I want to believe you should be running Twilight Blade and something else in your other hand slot. I really don't. I'm pretty sure Twilight Blade is just bait. Like, what are you gonna do? Play Warder Protection more times? You're gonna die. You take horror every time you play this. The best cancel, the one you actually want to duplicate, is the only one you can't afford to, and it's just a travesty. I genuinely think Cyclopean Hammer is right, but I don't think this stuff was right. I think it weighs down the deck so much that I feel undermined in any authority I might have on the character. But I don't think she comes close to living up to her promise. She's not a 6-head Mystic. She's like a lot of the time a 4 or 5-head Mystic, and 4 is okay, 5 is good, but she takes setup time. You're very frequently like having turns where you're like, thank God you drew an enemy. Let me engage him. And then you like play one action, you engage an enemy that could have been killed. You play again so he'll hit you and you play deny to put it under you. Then he hits you again in the enemy phase, you dodge, you put it under you. And like these play patterns are getting you value, they're doing stuff. But other Mystics just played the game normally. You're 2 actions behind an Akachi or an Agnes who are just doing stuff with those assets. She's nowhere near a 6-head Mystic because a 6-head Mystic has like 4 more rounds in a given game than Diana does, because Diana has to set up and get her head higher. A 4 or 5-head Mystic usually doesn't run a bunch of really suboptimal cancel cards. Like, I have a 35 card deck making me less consistent. Eventually I make up for it, but not immediately. I have a bunch of cards where I draw them and it's like, oh, awesome. I can get my head to 6 now. Like, it doesn't matter. So much of what Diana does falls short of her promise. The biggest thing she promises is to recur Warrior Protection 2, and then you realize that doing that kills you and it stops you from the best way of fighting in the class, and nothing quite gels in Diana. She's still really good. She's better than like more than half the characters in the game. Like, she is eventually a 5-6 head Mystic. You can run Holy Rosaries and Brother Xaviers and have ungodly amounts of head. You're basically invincible if you go for deny 5s. If you ever find yourself in an emergency state where you like need to Warrior Protection or lose the game, you can throw a Twilight Blade over your hammer to protect the team. She has Mystic clue finding strength. I think there's a better ability Diana that will make me think better about her, but I don't think she lives up to her promise. She's not really duplicating those spells. She's not really a 6-head Mystic, but she is really good. If there was any one-handed fight asset for Mystic that was actually excellent, I think it would push Diana really far up the tier list. But as long as she can't afford to hold that Twilight Blade and fight with her other hand, then I don't think she really works. And the economy tax of playing Bandoliers, arcane assets to find clues, and the Cyclopean Hammer, and your 3-cost Twilight Blade is just unreasonable. If that was all you needed to do, you couldn't afford it, but you still need Rosaries or Hallowed Mirrors and all these cancel events. Like so often on Diana, on anyone else, I would just play Rite of Seeking and Investigated on turn 1. You know what I do on Diana? I can't. Because if I play Rite of Seeking and get a money in the upkeep, and then when the Mythos phase hits us, I cannot actually play Dark Insight because it costs 2. That happened multiple times in the game, where I wasn't able to play the proactive valuable asset because if I did, I would have 1 head, I wouldn't be able to use it, and it would prevent me from playing Dark Insight in the Mythos phase. And that's agony. That, in a nutshell, is what is wrong with Diana, and why it's so hard to get her higher in the tier list than she currently is. She's still very good. Being shit in the first couple of turns is okay when you're eventually an 8-head Mystic with Cyclopean Hammer and Rite of Seeking 5, right? Like, you get there, you're gonna do stuff. But she has too many little downsides and inconsistencies. And she's the kind of character where, because of that competitive card game player in me, I really want to play her again. Fool me once, fold me once. I won't be putting it in my deck again. Bandolier strats are almost universally a greedy trap, and I fell for them again. And I think there are probably some other suboptimal cards in the deck. Spectral Razor really doesn't need to be here. You're a flex fighter. It's okay as like a sort of a backup weapon for Cyclopean Hammer, but I would much rather have some sort of draw card to more consistently do everything else. This deck is agonizing on the draw front. It's got 2 copies of Emergency Cash 2, and that is it. I know you have Diana's ability, but you don't. Diana's ability draws you 5 cards. Her deck is 5 cards bigger than everyone else's. It just cancels out the loss you start in. And God, if that isn't Diana in a nutshell, it's so frustrating. You start off in a hole, and she climbs out of it. So congratulations, you're right where everyone else started. It's a miracle. It is a feat that these cards, that these arcane assets, and the Cyclopean Hammer, and just the raw power of Ward and Deny and Guts and Promise Power, it is a miracle that she actually gets out of the hole. She could so easily be right beside Calvin, but she is actually quite good. Anyway, I'm done rambling about my frustrations with Diana. I'm looking forward to playing her again someday, but not for quite a while. I'm gonna go here. I hope you enjoyed hearing me ramble about Diana. I hope you did. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff really does help the channel grow. And I'll see you in the next one.